the alien princess teased his armor, until he took it off and turned to leave. HFY read it. Its sky, a rich swirl of orange and violet, reflected off the glassy spires and metallic domes that dominated the skyline. At the center of the city, the royal palace stood tall, a fortress of polished stone and shimmering metal, its towers reaching like fingers into the clouds. Despite its grandeur, today it was quieter than usual, the usual throngs of palace staff and citizens replaced by an unusual stillness. Inside one of the palace's grand halls, Captain Rylan Ardent adjusted the straps of his armor. The plate was heavy, custom-made to fit his broad frame, each segment polished to a mirror-like finish. It gleamed under the soft golden light of the hall's suspended orbs. Rylan was a human, and humans were rare in this sector of the galaxy, a species known for their resilience, adaptability, and courage. Here, among alien societies that prided themselves on ancient protocols and delicate diplomacy, a human often stood out like a beacon of unpredictability. He had been summoned to the palace not for combat but for a ceremony, a display of goodwill between the humans and the Viridians. And yet, as he walked through the hall, he felt the subtle weight of alien eyes on him, assessing him, curious and wary. At the far end of the hall, Princess Ilara watched from her elevated dais. She was not tall by human standards, but her presence commanded attention. Her skin shimmered faintly with a natural iridescence, a characteristic of her species, and her eyes glowed with the pale violet light of Viridian royalty. Her long fingers tapped idly on the railing, and a playful, almost mischievous smile curved her lips. "Captain Ardent," a voice called from below. It was formal yet warm, carrying the authority of the palace without stiffness. "You honor us with your presence." Rylan stopped and inclined his head. "The honor is mine, Princess Ilara," he replied, his voice calm, steady, carrying the careful cadence of someone used to diplomacy but trained for combat. Ilara's gaze lingered on his armor. It was not merely protection, it was a statement. Each plate was engraved with subtle patterns, telling stories of human achievements, battles won against odds, and the resilience of a species that had faced countless challenges across the stars. She tilted her head, the violet glow in her eyes flickering with amusement. "You wear it well," she said lightly, almost teasingly. "But I wonder, does it protect you from all dangers or just some?" Rylan's lips curved slightly, though he did not answer immediately. He had learned to read Viridian expressions over the past weeks, to understand the subtle differences between amusement, challenge, and curiosity. This playful teasing, was rare. It was a sign that the princess was testing him, not with weapons or words but with her wit. "Armor can protect the body," Rylan said carefully, "but courage and judgment protect far more." Ilara's laughter was soft, musical, and it echoed faintly through the hall. "Courage and judgment, you say? Interesting. Do humans often come here with such polished words?" Rylan shrugged, moving closer to the dais. Each step was measured, deliberate, the metal of his armor echoing softly. "Some do not. I prefer actions over words." "That," she said, leaning slightly forward, "is what I was hoping to hear." Her gaze flitted across the hall, noting the positions of the guards, the placement of ceremonial weapons. "You humans are fascinating, so direct, so bold, so unlike us." Rylan studied her silently, noting the flicker of amusement in her expression. It was a game she was playing, though he did not yet know the rules. Perhaps she wanted to see if he could remain composed under scrutiny, if he could maintain his dignity in the face of a tension that would unsettle most other beings. As he reached the bottom of the dais, he bowed, a slight inclination of the head. "I am here to serve, Princess, as I have been asked. Not to unsettle, not to impress, but to fulfill my duty." Ilara raised an eyebrow, her amusement deepening. "And yet, standing there in your armor, polished to perfection, you cannot help but impress." "Humans have a way of doing that." For a moment, Rylan said nothing. He simply regarded her, letting her words linger. It was a delicate balance. Respond too much, and it could become a dance of flattery he did not intend. Respond too little, and she might misread silence for disinterest. "You test me with words, princess," he said finally, a hint of a smile breaking the formal tone. "Shall I test you with mine or with my actions?" Her smile widened. "Why not both? I do enjoy surprises." The hall doors behind him suddenly opened, and attendants entered, carrying ceremonial weapons and relics of the Viridian lineage. They were ancient, curved blades forged from rare alloys, and each piece told stories of victories and losses, of alliances made and broken across millennia. Ryland's eyes scanned them carefully. Though he did not touch them, he understood their significance. This ceremony was not a mere display. It was a subtle challenge, a way to gauge his composure, his respect for tradition, and his understanding of alien culture. Alara stepped down from her dais, moving closer to him. Despite her grace, her movement was deliberate, precise, and yet there was a natural fluidity to it that suggested she was confident in her control over the space around her. She extended a hand, pointing to one of the ceremonial swords. "Will you hold it?" she asked, her tone deceptively simple. Ryland hesitated slightly. The sword was light, almost impossibly so for its size, yet it radiated power. He had faced strange weapons before, but the weight of history in a tool of war was not something that could be measured in grams. "I may," he said, reaching out slowly. His fingers closed around the hilt, feeling the subtle hum of energy that seemed to pulse within it. The metal was cool, smooth, yet carried a faint warmth as if aware of his touch. Alara observed him closely, her eyes narrowing slightly in amusement. "You handle it with care, respect. That is good." Ryland returned the sword to its stand without any hesitation, maintaining his composure. "Every weapon has a story. It deserves recognition before use." She tilted her head, her playful expression softening into genuine curiosity. "You are unlike anyone I have met before, Captain. Humans are rare here, and yet you carry yourself with a confidence that rivals our best warriors." Her words carried an unspoken challenge, not one of strength but of character. Could he maintain his humanity without bowing to alien customs entirely? Could he remain himself while honoring their traditions? Before Ryland could respond, a sudden movement caught his attention. A servant, carrying a ceremonial cloak, paused near the dais. Alara reached for it, draping it lightly over her shoulders. The fabric shimmered, a delicate interplay of color and light, unlike anything in human textiles. "Do you notice?" she asked, glancing at him. "Even in stillness, presentation matters. The way we appear tells a story before words are spoken." Ryland studied the fabric, then her. He understood the lesson hidden in her words, the importance of awareness, of perception, of nuance. In human terms, it was strategy. In Viridian terms, it was elegance. "You teach through actions as much as words," he said quietly. "A lesson I will not forget." Alara's gaze lingered on him, and for a moment there was no teasing, no amusement, only a silent acknowledgement of understanding. Then, almost imperceptibly, her lips curved into that playful smile once more. "Perhaps one day," she said, "you will show me how humans take off their armor. I am curious how courage and judgment look without the shield of metal." Ryland straightened, his expression unreadable. A subtle tension passed between them, a recognition that this was more than a simple ceremony, more than a display of diplomacy. It was a test of trust, of character, of humanity itself. He bowed again, more deeply this time. "Perhaps, princess. But that is a lesson for another day." The hall seemed to hold its breath as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over polished floors and intricate carvings. In that moment, two beings from vastly different worlds met not as strangers or diplomats, but as equals, curious, cautious, and intrigued by the other's nature. And in that quiet, suspended moment, Ryland felt the stirrings of something unfamiliar. Not fear, not desire, but a spark of connection, born from mutual respect and the unspoken understanding that in a universe so vast, moments like this were rare and precious. Alara studied him one last time, then turned gracefully, signaling the attendants to continue the ceremony. Rylan followed, his armor clinking softly with each step, yet there was a new lightness in his stride. He knew that in the days to come, this encounter would shape not just the mission he had been assigned, but the course of his place in a world far from his own. And though neither spoke of it, both sensed the game had only just begun. The following morning, the palace of Loritha stirred to life with a quiet urgency. Servants moved briskly along polished corridors, carrying trays of iridescent fruits and delicate refreshments, while attendants adjusted ceremonial banners that hung like silken waves from the high ceilings. The hum of energy in the city outside had not reached the palace walls. Inside, it was a controlled rhythm of purpose, discipline, and expectation. Captain Rylan Ardent stood near the balcony of his temporary quarters, observing the alien skyline. The twin moons of Veridian were still visible, pale against the deepening sky, and the city beneath glimmered like a constellation brought to ground. His mind replayed the previous day's events, the ceremony, the princess's teasing, the subtle but undeniable sense that she had been testing him. It was rare for a human to receive such direct attention from royalty, and rarer still for it to be playful rather than rigidly formal. Ryland's training as a human military officer had prepared him for negotiation, combat, and diplomacy, but Veridian royalty presented a different kind of challenge, one that tested patience, perception, and the ability to navigate subtle social currents. A soft chime echoed through his room, and Ryland turned to see an attendant entering. "Captain Ardent," the being said in the lilting cadence of the Veridian tongue, though accented with careful human translation, "Princess Ilara requests your presence in the Hall of Trials. She wishes to continue your discussions." Rylan inclined his head. "I will attend immediately." As he walked through the palace corridors, the weight of his armor reminded him of the contrast between his human world and this alien environment. On Earth, armor had been purely functional, designed to withstand blows and absorb damage. Here, it was a symbol, a statement, a reflection of strength and character. And yet, he felt a subtle tension within it, as if the princess's challenge had revealed a weakness that had nothing to do with physical protection. The Hall of Trials was an enormous chamber, circular in design, with high ceilings that arched into translucent panels, allowing the twin moons' light to illuminate the room in pale silver. At the center, platforms rose in concentric circles, each bearing intricate carvings and holographic symbols that pulsed faintly, reflecting centuries of tradition. It was a place meant for ceremonial contests, tests of skill, strategy, and intellect, and Ryland felt the familiar rush of anticipation that came with facing the unknown. Princess Ilara awaited him at the central platform, her iridescent gown shifting color subtly with each movement. She did not gesture for him to approach immediately. Instead, she let him study the chamber, the symbols, and the platforms. Her violet eyes glimmered with curiosity and amusement. "Captain," she said at last, her voice carrying lightly across the chamber, "do you see the Hall of Trials not just as a test, but as a story? Each platform represents a path, a choice, a consequence. Your task is simple in words but challenging in practice. You will navigate the hall according to your judgment, and the choices you make will reflect not just skill but character." Rylan nodded slowly. "I understand, and if I fail—" Ilara's smile was enigmatic. "Failure is only the first lesson, Captain. The real challenge is learning from it. Humans are fascinating in how they respond to unexpected circumstances. I am curious which path you will take." The first platform shimmered faintly as he stepped onto it. It was cool under his boots, and the carvings beneath his feet seemed to pulse in recognition of his presence. A holographic projection rose before him, a representation of an alien terrain, jagged cliffs and swirling mists. A voice neither fully male nor female filled the space. Choose your approach, diplomacy, strength, or ingenuity. Your choice will guide your path. Rylan paused, considering the options. Diplomacy had brought him far in this galaxy, but it was delicate, uncertain. Strength was immediate, reliable, but sometimes blunt. Ingenuity required quick thinking, creativity, and trust in his own instincts. For a moment he closed his eyes, taking a breath. Then, with measured confidence, he spoke. Ingenuity. The platform responded, light shifting beneath him, the terrain in the hologram morphing. Suddenly, the mist coalesced into a series of obstacles, narrow bridges, moving platforms, and faintly glowing energy fields. He moved carefully, balancing speed with caution, each step measured against both logic and instinct. Alara watched from the central dais, her fingers tapping lightly on the railing. She noted his movements, the way he observed each challenge before committing to it, the subtle way he adjusted his posture to maintain both speed and stability. It was a performance, but more importantly, it revealed the human capacity to analyze, adapt, and act decisively, traits that Viridian culture valued highly, even if expressed differently. One particular section of the hall tested his spatial reasoning. A series of floating platforms shifted unpredictably, each suspended over a holographic void. Rylan calculated the timing of his movements, then leaped with precision, his armor shifting with the motion but not hindering it. Halfway across, the platform beneath him tilted unexpectedly, and for a split second balance teetered on the edge. He adjusted instinctively, letting his weight guide him, landing solidly on the next platform. A faint pulse of light marked his success, and the hall seemed to hum in acknowledgement. "Impressive," Alara said softly, her eyes glinting. "You rely on both instinct and observation. That is very human." Rylan gave her a brief nod but did not pause. The next obstacle required cooperation, though it was a solitary challenge. Holographic projections appeared, images of Viridian citizens in delicate situations, requiring him to manipulate energy bridges and barriers to allow safe passage. The challenge was subtle. Success was possible through brute force, but the path demanded careful planning, consideration, and foresight. He hesitated for a moment, noting the complexity of the projections. The holograms flickered, showing potential consequences of error. Then methodically, he began constructing paths, adjusting each energy bridge with precision. It was not enough to solve the puzzle. He had to solve it efficiently, gracefully, and in a manner that respected the intent of the trial. Alara leaned forward slightly, intrigued by his methodical approach. Many beings approached the hall with arrogance, assuming that power or raw speed would suffice. Rylan, however, demonstrated patience and judgment, qualities she admired and rare among visitors. Finally, the last challenge of the hall presented itself, a mirrored chamber. Reflections of him appeared on all sides, multiplied endlessly. At first, the room disoriented him. The illusion of countless captains in identical armor created a sense of overwhelming presence. Then he noticed a faint vibration under his boots, a subtle cue in the floor indicating the true path. He moved deliberately, testing each step, aligning his actions with perception and reason. The reflections shifted, converged, and finally parted as he reached the chamber's exit, where a single beam of light awaited. A soft chime filled the hall. The trials were complete. Rylan stepped into the light, feeling both relief and satisfaction. Though the challenges had tested him physically and mentally, he had remained true to his nature, thoughtful, courageous, and observant. Alara descended from her platform to meet him. She stopped just a few feet away, studying him with an intensity that made him keenly aware of his own presence. "You have completed the Hall of Trials," she said. "Not simply by moving from one platform to another, but by demonstrating understanding. You observe, adapt, and respect the challenges before you. That is unusual, even admirable. Rylan inclined his head. Thank you, Princess. I have learned much, and not only about your culture, but about the importance of patience and observation in all things. Ilara smiled, her amusement returning. And yet, I wonder how you would fare without your armor. You rely on it heavily, though you carry yourself with confidence. There is a lesson in vulnerability, Captain. Perhaps one day you will reveal it. Ryland's expression remained calm, though a subtle shift passed over his shoulders. The princess's words were not a threat, nor a challenge in the conventional sense. They were an invitation, an exploration of trust, of revealing character beyond outward protection. I will consider that lesson, he said carefully. She tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that made the air between them feel charged. I am curious about many things, Captain. Not least how humans face situations without the safety of protection, relying solely on their wits, their courage, and their judgment. Rylan allowed a brief smile. You already know humans are capable of more than one might expect. Ilara laughed softly, the sound echoing like crystal in the chamber. Yes, and that is what makes you so interesting. You are not simply strong, you are thoughtful. You are not simply brave, you are perceptive. You navigate the world differently from us, yet with purpose. That is rare. For a moment, silence settled between them. Neither spoke, yet both understood the unspoken acknowledgement. This was a connection that transcended species, a recognition of mutual respect and fascination. The princess stepped back, gesturing toward the hall's exit. Come, Captain. The day is not over. There are other lessons yet to explore, other moments where observation and action will meet. Perhaps, in time, you will show me more than your skill. You will show me the courage that lies beneath your armor. Ryland followed, aware of the subtle shift in the atmosphere. The palace corridors seemed warmer, less formal, and yet imbued with the same expectation of excellence and understanding. With each step, he felt the weight of responsibility, not only to his mission, but to the bridge he was building between human and Veridian culture, between himself and the princess. As they reached the palace gardens, the twin moons had risen fully, casting silver light across the meticulously tended flora. Alien flowers with translucent petals glowed faintly, and water features created gentle symphonies of sound. Ilara paused beside a reflecting pool, her gaze on the rippling surface. You see, Captain, she said softly, there is more to strength than armor and skill. There is reflection, there is thought, there is understanding of the world around you. You have proven you possess all of these, yet, her gaze flicked to him, violet eyes gleaming with playful challenge. I wonder if you could do so without your armor, without the symbols of strength you carry so well. Rylan regarded her calmly. The challenge was clear, yet not immediate. The choice would come in its own time, a test of character rather than physicality. For now, he understood the lesson. Courage and judgment were not bound to metal or tradition, but resided within the individual. And perhaps one day, he said finally, I will show you that lesson in full. Ilara's smile widened, her amusement now tempered by genuine intrigue. Perhaps, Captain, perhaps. They walked together through the gardens, the soft glow of alien flora illuminating their path. The palace behind them stood silent but alive, a witness to the beginning of a connection that would test boundaries, challenge assumptions, and reveal the strength of humanity in a galaxy far beyond Earth. And as they moved beneath the twin moons, both knew that the game of wit, observation, and character had only just begun. The hall of trials had been conquered, but the true test, the one of trust, understanding, and courage beyond armor, awaited in the days to come. The morning air in Loritha was crisp, carrying the faint metallic scent of the city's sprawling structures. Captain Rylan Ardent had barely slept. Though the trials had ended successfully, his mind replayed the princess's words over and over, her curiosity, her subtle challenge about vulnerability, and the unspoken weight behind her teasing. For the first time, he considered the armor he had worn so confidently not only as protection, but as a barrier, something that separated him from true exposure to another's judgment, a physical shield over a mind and spirit that had always been relied upon. The palace corridors were quiet as he walked toward the gardens where Princess Alara had requested to meet him again. Today, however, there was a sense of anticipation that went beyond ceremonial formality. Servants moved in hushed tones, and even the air seemed charged with expectation. When he arrived, the princess was already waiting near a sculpted fountain, the water catching the morning light and scattering it like diamonds across the nearby marble paths. "Alara," he greeted, bowing slightly. "Rylan," she replied, though her tone held more warmth than usual. "Today's lessons are different. The Hall of Trials tested your skill, your judgment, your mind. Today, I wonder how you will respond to challenge not of the body or intellect, but of perception and trust." Rylan studied her carefully. Her eyes, glowing with their characteristic violet light, carried a seriousness that contrasted sharply with the playful teasing of the previous days. He realized she had something specific in mind, something that would require him to step outside his comfort zone. "Tell me," she continued, "have you ever been tested not by threat but by understanding, by the choice to reveal yourself as you truly are?" He nodded slowly. Humans often faced moral and ethical challenges, and in combat and diplomacy, honesty and courage were just as valuable as strength. He understood that she sought more than his skill, she sought a glimpse of his humanity. Alara gestured to a narrow path leading deeper into the palace gardens. Strange, luminescent plants lined the way, and subtle vibrations emanated from the ground beneath. "Walk with me," she said, "and follow the path. At its end lies a choice that is yours alone to make. Observe carefully, judge wisely, and act with intention. Nothing here is as simple as it seems." As they moved through the gardens, Rylan noted that the paths were lined with small platforms, each engraved with symbols he did not recognize. Some were obvious warnings, others were subtle, almost imperceptible. Holographic projections shimmered faintly above the platforms, creating images of people, landscapes, and abstract designs. Occasionally, the projections reacted to their movements, shifting, merging, or disappearing entirely. "You see," Alara explained softly, "this is a reflection of life, Captain. One path appears clear but may conceal danger. Another may appear perilous, yet hold insight. Each choice carries consequences." Ryland's eyes swept the garden, taking in the subtle challenges before him. The first platform projected a holographic scene of a human and a Viridian caught in a perilous situation. A chasm stretched before them, and only one route could be chosen to ensure safety. He stepped carefully onto the platform, his boots touching the smooth surface with precision. "Observe," Alara said. He studied the holograms. The human in the projection hesitated, unsure of which path to take. The Viridian relied on instinct, moving quickly but without strategy. Rylan considered the situation, noting both strengths and vulnerabilities. Then, with deliberate calm, he guided the projections. By indicating movement and timing, he enabled both figures to cross safely. The holograms shimmered and disappeared, replaced by a faint pulse of light. "Good," Alara said, her smile subtle. "You see beyond the obvious. You understand that thought and observation guide action. Yet the path ahead grows more personal. You will be tested not by what you see, but by what you feel." The next platform emitted a soft hum. As Ryland stepped onto it, the holographic projection changed. He was no longer observing distant figures. Instead, he faced a mirrored reflection of himself. The image was not perfect. It exaggerated certain features, softened others, and displayed an almost imperceptible aura of vulnerability. Rylan could feel the subtle pull of self-consciousness, the instinctive judgment that humans often carried about their own presence. "You are human," Alara said from beside him, her voice quiet. Your strength is not only in your body but in your perception of yourself. What you choose to show, what you choose to conceal, it defines how others see you. How do you react when the reflection is not simply what it seems? Rylan looked into the mirrored hologram. He noticed his posture, the way his armor reflected light, the way his expression suggested certainty. And yet, there was a vulnerability in the reflection that he could not ignore. It was a reminder that despite training and strength, humans are not invincible. Fear, uncertainty, and hesitation existed even in the most capable. He took a breath and deliberately relaxed his stance, allowing the reflection to show a more authentic version of himself, less polished, more aware of subtle tensions and emotions. As he did, the hologram shifted, acknowledging the change. The platform's hum softened and a pathway forward opened. Alara's eyes shone with appreciation. You are learning well. Strength without self-awareness is arrogance. Courage without judgment is recklessness. You balance both. The next platform was the most subtle challenge yet. A soft glow indicated the path forward, but the projection displayed a delicate scene. A Viridian child reaching for a floating orb of energy, unaware of the dangerous currents around. The choice was clear: intervene and protect the child, risking exposure to harm, or step back and observe, risking failure to act responsibly. Rylan stepped forward instinctively. Safety first, he murmured, guiding his hands over the holographic controls. The child's figure moved with precision, avoiding harm as the orb stabilized. A faint warmth radiated through the platform, and he realized the lesson. Leadership was not about dominance, but guidance, observation, and timely intervention. Alara nodded. Most beings would hesitate. You act without hesitation, yet with care. That is human courage, calculated, deliberate, and guided by empathy. Not many can do both. Finally, they reached the last platform, bathed in a soft silver light. It was empty, save for a single pedestal upon which rested a small, unadorned helmet. It was human in design, sleek, minimal, and unmistakably symbolic. Alara gestured toward it. This, she said, represents what you carry every day, the protection, the armor, the barrier between your true self and the world. Will you place it aside and walk the path without it? Will you reveal yourself fully, trusting that courage and judgment will suffice? Rylan paused. The weight of the moment pressed upon him, more than any physical armor ever could. Here, the challenge was not about skill or intellect, it was about trust, vulnerability, and integrity. He looked at Alara, her expression calm but expectant, and understood the lesson fully. He reached for the helmet, lifting it slowly and setting it aside. The act felt heavier than any battle, more deliberate than any strategy he had ever employed. Without armor, he was exposed, not physically to harm, but emotionally to scrutiny, to judgment, to connection. Alara's eyes glimmered with approval. Step forward, Captain. Show me what courage looks like without shields. Let your humanity guide your actions. Rylan stepped onto the platform without hesitation. The silver light embraced him, highlighting every line, every feature, every subtle motion. He felt a sense of liberation, a clarity that came from trusting himself completely. Each step was deliberate, controlled, yet free of the physical constraints of armor. The platform responded, shifting to display a series of holographic challenges, obstacles that required strategy, observation, and adaptability. Rylan moved with calm precision, balancing speed with careful judgment, intuition with calculation. He realized that without the armor, he was not weaker. He was more aware, more attuned to the environment, and more capable of responding with deliberate intention. Alara watched silently, a faint smile playing on her lips. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable. The human before her moved with purpose, confidence, and clarity, not because of protection, but because of inner strength. When he reached the end of the platform, the silver light dimmed, leaving only him and the princess. He breathed steadily, feeling the quiet power of presence, trust, and authenticity. "You have passed this trial," Alara said softly, stepping closer. "Not through skill alone, not through intellect alone, but through understanding yourself. Courage, judgment, and authenticity, these are the traits that define humans in ways even we struggle to emulate." Rylan inclined his head. "I have learned from your guidance, Princess. More than any trial, this has taught me the value of trust and self-awareness." She studied him for a moment longer, then extended her hand, not in command but in acknowledgement. "You are human, Rylan, and that alone carries strength that is rare, remarkable, and captivating. You have shown what it means to face the world without shields, and yet remain unbroken." He met her gaze, understanding the significance beyond words. In the vast galaxy, amidst alien cultures and unfamiliar worlds, he had found recognition, not as a warrior, not as a guest, but as a human capable of courage, thought, and integrity. The twin moons shone overhead, casting silver light across the gardens. In that moment, the connection between human and Viridian, the understanding, the trust, and the admiration was undeniable. Alara stepped back slightly, her playful teasing returning, though softened with genuine respect. "Perhaps next time we will explore what it means to challenge strength without defense in more practical terms. But for now, you have shown me the essence of humanity, Captain, and that is rare." Rylan nodded, a sense of quiet satisfaction washing over him. The trials were more than ceremonies. They were lessons in trust, judgment, and connection. And though the day was not yet over, he knew that what had begun in the Hall of Trials and the palace gardens would shape the days to come, revealing more about humanity, courage, and the nature of relationships across the stars. Together they walked back through the gardens, the air filled with the gentle hum of alien life, the quiet reflections of water, and the unspoken understanding that challenges awaited. Yet they would face them not as adversaries, nor as strangers, but as beings connected by respect, curiosity, and shared discovery. The palace of Loritha glimmered under the twin moons as night deepened, casting long shadows across the reflective surfaces of the gardens and courtyards. Captain Rylan Ardent walked beside Princess Alara, their steps light but deliberate. The lessons of the past days had already left a mark on him, and he sensed that tonight would be the culmination of those trials, a challenge that would test the balance of human ingenuity, courage, and the trust he had begun to build with the princess. Alara led him to a secluded part of the palace grounds, where the architecture merged seamlessly with the alien flora. Towers of crystalline glass reflected the moonlight, and paths paved with polished stones curved around glowing water features. In the center of this serene space was an open arena, circular and perfectly symmetrical, with concentric rings marked on the ground. Holographic projectors embedded in the floor hummed softly, indicating that the next trial had begun. "This is the arena of insight," Alara said, her violet eyes fixed on him. "It is not a test of strength alone, nor of intellect alone, but of character, perception, and the choices you make under pressure. Everything you have learned about strategy, judgment, and trust will guide you here, and what you choose will reveal more than your skill. It will reveal who you are." Rylan nodded. The arena felt alive, almost sentient. Each ring of the circle was embedded with subtle energy patterns that shifted as he moved, creating illusions of obstacles, enemies, or pathways. This was unlike anything he had faced before. Here, raw power alone would not suffice. He would need to rely on his instincts, his human ingenuity, and the lessons from the previous trials. Alara raised a hand, and the central platform of the arena projected a three-dimensional maze of light. "You must navigate to the center. Along the way, you will encounter challenges that test perception, speed, and morality. Some obstacles are real, some illusions. Some demand immediate action, others patience. Fail, and you restart." Succeed and the truth of your character will be revealed. Ryland squared his shoulders, stepping onto the outer ring. Immediately, the arena responded. Holographic barriers rose, shimmering and pulsing with alien energy. He moved cautiously at first, testing the ground, observing the shifting patterns. One barrier appeared solid but flickered slightly. He realized it was an illusion. Another shimmered harmlessly but projected a faint vibration. It was the true obstacle. He advanced carefully, combining instinct with observation. Each movement was precise, measured, and calculated, yet free of hesitation. The hallways of light twisted and turned, some looping back upon themselves, creating disorientation. Rylan reminded himself of the lessons from the mirrored platform in the gardens. Observe, adapt, and trust judgment over instinct alone. Midway through the maze, a projection appeared, a Viridian soldier, poised in what seemed to be an aggressive stance. The illusion was vivid, almost convincing, yet subtle details betrayed its falsehood. Rylan paused, analyzing the stance, the weight distribution, the faint flicker in the eyes. He realized it was a test of reaction. Would he strike first, assume threat, or observe and discern? He chose the latter. Waiting for a brief moment, he observed the soldier's motions and detected the subtle cues that marked it as a holographic projection. With calm precision, he stepped aside, bypassing the illusion entirely. The platform responded with a soft pulse of light, acknowledging his discernment. Alara's voice echoed from above the arena. Many fail this test. Impatience leads to mistakes. Preconceived notions lead to disaster. You rely on judgment, and that is commendable. As Rylan continued, the arena shifted again. Now, multiple holographic figures appeared, humans and Viridian citizens alike, moving along different pathways. The challenge required him to coordinate their movements without touching them directly. He realized it was a test of influence, strategy, and foresight. Drawing upon the lessons of the garden platforms, he guided their paths through observation, subtle manipulation of holographic energy, and logical sequencing. One figure hesitated at a dangerous projection. He adjusted the timing of another, creating a safe corridor. Slowly, methodically, all figures reached their intended destinations. The arena responded and the outer rings dissolved, leaving only a path toward the center. Rylan took a steadying breath. The final stretch would be the true test, the moment where intellect, courage, and human resilience would converge. The central platform rose, revealing a single projection, Princess Alara herself. Her holographic image was flawless, yet it radiated a challenge, her eyes locked on him with intensity. "Here," she said softly, though the sound reverberated through the arena, "you are faced with a choice. The path to the center is open, yet I am the final trial. You may proceed directly and reach the goal, or you may engage with me, testing the balance between strategy, trust, and understanding. Your choice will determine the lesson's true value." Rylan studied the projection carefully. A direct approach would guarantee completion, but it would bypass the essence of the test: trust, perception, and human judgment. Engaging with her, even as a holographic projection, meant exposure to uncertainty, the potential for misjudgment, and the exercise of empathy and collaboration. He stepped forward. "I will engage," he said, voice calm. "This is part of the lesson. Understanding, trust, and insight are as important as the goal itself." The projection shimmered and solidified, and suddenly the arena transformed. Light shifted, forming a series of obstacles that mirrored the princess's movements. She moved gracefully, creating barriers, pathways, and illusions that required him to anticipate, adapt, and respond. Every step became a dialogue of motion and intention, a silent exchange between human and Viridian, intellect and intuition, strategy and insight. Rylan relied on his training, yet went beyond it. He observed the subtle cues, the timing of her steps, the flicker in the holographic energy, the patterns in her projected gestures. He adjusted his movements to complement hers, navigating the obstacles with precision and foresight. At one moment, an energy barrier surged toward him. His instincts screamed to react instantly, but he remembered the lessons of patience and observation. Waiting a heartbeat, he detected the faint delay in the projection sequence, then moved decisively through the gap. The barrier dissipated, replaced by a soft glow marking success. Ilara's voice echoed, softer now, almost approving. You understand balance. You are human, yet adaptable. You face uncertainty with judgment, not impulsiveness. That is what I hope to see. The arena shifted again. Now a chasm appeared between Rylan and the center platform. The projection of Ilara stood across it, her posture open, inviting. There was no bridge, no path, only the leap itself. He realized the final test was not strategy or skill, but courage and trust. He had to leap without knowing the outcome. Ryland's heart quickened. Humans often faced such moments where risk was absolute and certainty was an illusion. He took a deep breath, recalling every lesson: observation, patience, judgment, courage, and trust. Then he ran, leaping across the chasm with controlled power, arms extended, eyes fixed on the center. For a brief heartbeat, it felt as if the world held its breath. Then his boots landed firmly on the central platform. The arena pulsed with light, the projections dissipated, and silence followed, soft, approving, and full of significance. Ilara appeared beside him, no longer a projection but in person. She smiled, genuine and radiant. You have completed the arena of insight, Rylan. Not because of speed or strength, not because of armor or instinct alone, but because of your humanity. You trust yourself, you observe. You act with integrity and courage. That is what I sought to see. Rylan exhaled, the tension of the trials finally easing. Thank you, Princess. Your guidance, it has shown me more than I expected. About myself, about humanity, and about the value of trust and perception. She nodded. And you have proven what humans are capable of, even in worlds far from their own. That is why I sought your presence. Not for conquest or diplomacy alone, but to witness the essence of human resilience, ingenuity, and courage. You carry that spirit wherever you go, Rylan. That is rare, even remarkable. For a moment, they simply stood, gazing at the arena, at the moonlit palace gardens, at the city beyond. In that silence was mutual recognition, an acknowledgement of human capability, alien curiosity, and the bond formed through trials and understanding. Then Ilara tilted her head, the familiar playful glimmer returning. And yet, I wonder how much more you might show me if you truly trusted, if you laid aside every symbol of strength and let your essence guide you fully. Rylan allowed himself a small, confident smile. Perhaps one day, Princess. For now, I think I have shown enough to prove humanity is worth observing. Ilara laughed softly, the sound like crystal chimes. Indeed. And you have given me more than I expected. Not just skill, not just courage, but judgment, reflection, and the rare ability to balance all three. That is captivating. As they walked back toward the palace, the twin moons casting silver light across the city, Rylan realized that the trials had tested more than physical prowess or intellect. They had revealed the power of humanity itself, the capacity for courage, insight, adaptability, and integrity in the face of uncertainty. The princess and the human captain moved side by side, allies, explorers, and participants, in a game that transcended species. Their journey was far from over, but the lessons of armor, vulnerability, and judgment would remain. And in the quiet of the Viridian night, the galaxy felt a little smaller, a little brighter and full of promise, because humanity, in its essence, had proven its value once again. The alien princess teased his armor, until he took it off and turned to leave. HFY read it.